Namaste. Hi, everybody. Today I thought I'd share some of my thoughts on pagan pluralism and how that relates to tolerance for people that are different and cultural diversity and a casual, sort of easy-go-lucky attitude towards people of other religions and other faiths, other cultures, versus monotheistic monoculture and how that lends to more of almost like an anxiety when you encounter people that are different, that have different gods, different beliefs, different cultural systems. And there's a sort of impulse to make everybody conform to one idea, because that's like monotheism, one God, one way, one people. It's very, everybody needs to conform. Whereas the pagan pluralistic systems are more kind of like a wild jungle that's just, it may seem kind of like really crazy and chaotic, but it's its own organized like chaos. It makes sense if you understand like the life of the jungle. It might look really crazy and unorganized, but it's all this beautiful orchestration of like all these different life forms. Whereas monotheism, a lot of the times I almost see it as like Baroque culture, like a Baroque garden that's like extremely manicured and everything is at like 90-degree angles and like super manicured, and like there's no weeds and nothing can be out of place, and it's extremely controlled, every aspect of it. So that's kind of how I see these two different cultures. Now there's one concept in particular that I wanted to talk about that it exists to different degrees in the pagan pluralistic cultures and in the monotheistic monocultures. Is this idea of Ishta Devta, or a personal deity, or a patron deity, or a patron saint. Because when the Christians came around, they took this concept and they basically just applied it to the saints. So in Hinduism, we call this Ishta Devta, or your personal deity. Now, there's this understanding that because we are eternal souls, without beginning or end, that means, Lord, how many life forms have we gone through, for how many lifetimes, so many different experiences. That makes us all so incredibly crazy, like unique, and puts us all at different places in our spiritual journeys towards, self-realization and all of these sorts of things. So what's good for one person might not be good for another person, because again, we're all in different places in our journeys. And if you think about it, anything in life that is advertised or marketed to you as one size fits all, typically anything that is one size fits all or works for all people, not all the time, but most of the time, is of like really bad quality, cheap quality, or of like appealing to the lowest denomination possible, so it can reach all of the people possible. So it's not a very effective or great qualitative way of doing things, whereas like a more individualized approach is much better. It's kind of like in Ayurveda and in traditional Chinese medicine, you might have 5 different people all come in with all complaining of headache, but once you do pulse diagnosis, once you look at the tongue, once you do your assessment of the person, you might see each one of those 5 people have a different reason to have the headache, and they might each have a different kind of headache. Therefore, because they each need that individualized approach, the acupuncture treatment, the herbal recipe will be slightly different for each person, because we want to attack the root of that issue for those people the best we can. And the best way, the highest quality, the most effective way of doing that is through an individualized approach. Whereas in the West, what do? You have 10 different people with a headache, you just tell them to pop a pill, the same sort of pill, right? Some people it might work for them, some people it won't work. Some people, in addition to their headache, they will now have a stomach ache too. So, not individualized approach doesn't work as well. So when we apply that sort of logic to the spiritual realm, then obviously, we're not all going to have the same sort of spiritual practice. We're going to have different religions because we have different people, and people are of different natures and they're different temperaments. So it's almost like if someone on their spiritual journey is in kindergarten, their sort of spiritual lessons and the things they need to be working on and learning is going to be someone different that is the spiritual equivalent of like they're in college in Harvard or something, So depending on your nature, depending on your interests, depending on your attractions and what you're pulled towards, depending on what your passions are, these things are indications of who your patron deity or who your Ishta Devta would be. So while there is a concept of a Brahman or of like a unified singular consciousness or God, almost like one diamond, that one diamond might have innumerable facets on it that reflect the light differently. So there might be that one Brahman with all of those different reflections of divinities and all of, innumerable manifestations, just like this crystal is just sparkling on all these different ways. There's all these different forms that God can appear and manifest him and her in itself. No? So a person that is of a more masculine, aggressive, martial sort of archetype, someone who is like more Martian. Think like a really masculine, like gym going muscle dude that's like in the military, very Martian. So that kind of a person, they might naturally be pulled towards deities, saints, angels, gods and goddesses of that same sort of martial spirit, of that same sort of aggressive male energy. Where you have other people, they might be really feminine, creative, they're into poetry, the arts, and music. They're always in their head and in like pursuing intellectual and mental and artistic pursuits. They would be pulled more towards like Saraswati, the goddess of like learning and wisdom and the intellect and the arts and those sorts of things. So naturally, you can see by people's nature, they can work with these deities, they can work with these archetypes, they can work with these beings, and in doing so, through certain rituals, through worship of those perfect beings, of those higher beings, of those perfected beings, or of just the idea of those qualities itself, worshiping that, you refine and perfect and polish those qualities and characteristics in your own self. I hope that makes sense. So, a person who has the qualities of Krishna in them, and they're really attracted to those qualities of Krishna, they have those qualities and characteristics within themselves. And as they go worshiping the Krishna and doing tapas and rituals and devotion and burning sins away, and they're doing all of this spiritual sadhana and all of these things, those Krishna qualities within them become strengthened. And it's almost like you're a mirror, and you yourself become more of a brighter mirror, a more reflective, clearer mirror of your own patron deity, of your God itself. So in your worship, you become that reflection of those qualities, of those characteristics. Okay? And this is a beautiful system and concept. And again, it exists in many of the pagan traditions, so-called pagan traditions. If you look at the African traditions, Ifa and Santeria, we had the same thing. The rulers of your head, or the owners of your head. If you go to the religious and spiritual leaders and, like the African religions, like a good santero, they can tell you by looking at you, by observing your nature, like if a woman is like, or not even a woman, a man, could be a man too, is like really sensual, really sexual, really into fashion, the beautiful things of life, like the, the perfumes, the hair's done, the makeup. They are just about the juice and the luxury of life, those sorts of things. They're probably a child of Oshun. That's how you would say you're a child of, or Oshun owns your head or your soul. So those people, the children of Oshun, would work with her, and through their worship and work with Oshun, those qualities of themselves, those Oshun qualities, those archetypal qualities will become more nourished and blossom forth and show and manifest within you. This, I think, lends towards people being really tolerant and accepting of people that are different, because there's just this, if you have this understanding that of patron deities or of Ishta Devtas, or different rulers of different heads, then obviously not everybody's going to be the same of you. It's a silly, nonsensical expectation for people to have all the same gods and goddesses and angels and guides and ancestors and people that you do. It's just silly, nonsensical notion. It makes no sense. So you expect, actually, diversity. You expect people to have different religious views, different gods, different rituals, because we're all in different places in our spiritual journeys. And this is really, this is funny that, like, when people start learning about Hindus and stuff, it's funny that, like, we can say, like, in one household itself, everybody can be Hindu, but everybody could be worshiping different gods, different deities, because everybody has a different Ishta Devtas. So maybe one person, they're a devotee of Krishna, and they're really into the bhakti yoga, into the devotion, and they're more emotional and into singing and, like, worshiping the forms of the deities. Whereas someone else, maybe they are more pulled to Shiva and Shaivism, and they're not really into the puja, and they don't really like chanting and all of that, but they just meditate, and they do all of their meditation, and that's okay. And then there's other people that they just don't like any form of personal deity at all, and they don't believe in personalism, I guess you could say, or a deity or the supreme reality having personality. So they have their own philosophical way of going about things too. So in Hinduism, there's this organic richness, this organic diversity, and you can have, 15 different Hindus all worshiping different gods, all coming from different lineages and different traditions, and they all get together and it's fine. And I think that's just so beautiful. I think that's so great. And it's not even just with Hindus, because I was with a friend, and we were talking about this, because he's like, man, like, Hindus get along. It's so easy for them to get along with other people, even if they're Christian, or if they're atheist, or if they're Muslim, or if they're Jewish. Like, it's no problem at all. Whereas for a lot of people in America with certain monotheistic assumptions about religion or spirituality, they think that, like, oh, someone has a different religion or a different God than me, then there must be some inherent anxiety around that, some inherent uncomfortability, because, like, my God is right, and my way is right, my culture is right, and yours is wrong. Therefore, there's some maybe misalignment there and cause for anxiety in the connection or the relationship. But in fact, for Hindu people, no problem. So I think that's a really beautiful concept. And in Christianity, I think the concept still exists, but it's just for patron saints instead of deities. If you're born in a certain town, or if you're born on a certain day, you might be named after that saint. But even if you're named after that saint, depending on your job, if you're a doctor, or if you're a blacksmith, or if you're a mechanic, or if you're a gardener, or if you're a veterinarian, you'll be working with different saints or angels, and even versions of, like, Jesus and the Virgin Mary, Virgin Mary. So I love this concept of Ishta Devta, but unfortunately with the monotheistic religions, obviously you can't really have it. It can only extend to the saints. It can't extend to deity because there's only one God and there's only one truth and then there's only one religion and there's only one way to go about all of the things. So that creates automatically this, again, like inherent intolerance with your neighbors that are different, religiously or spiritually, or heck, people of your own tradition, but of a different denomination. So we see how really easily in all of the monotheistic religions, it's really easy for people, we see it all the time, for them to go through down the purity spirals, and there's all these fighting between denominations and like break, the Catholics and then the Orthodox, and they break off. And then in America, every day there's a new like non-denominational or some new Protestant denomination being created because some person doesn't agree with this or that, so they just create their whole new church or a whole new denomination, and then they expect everybody in that church to believe just like this and practice just like that. And it's not to say that each tradition or denomination doesn't necessarily have a right to do things its own ways, but I wish it was like in Hinduism or some of the pagan traditions where there was an overarching understanding of like, yeah, I have my way of going about things, but it's silly to expect people in other places or in other times to do the same as me here and now. That's just silly. Or at least I think so. I hope that all makes sense. Yeah, we're almost at 17 minutes, so I should probably be cutting it off here before we drag it on too long. Is that all I want to say? I think that's all I want to say. One more thing I will say. So I encourage you, if you don't already know, who your patron deity is or who your patron saint is, explore yourself, know yourself, explore your passions and your interests and the things that give you life. Like for the gardener, the gardening gives them life. To be out in the nature and with their plants and growing their flowers and their trees and their fruits and vegetables, like it gives them life. For the artist, to be with their canvas and their paints, to be creating, to be in that creative painting process, that gives them life. Like to be an Olympian athlete, whether if they're like a runner, a marathon runner, when they are running, when they are training, when they are in that Zen running mode, like that gives them life. So you have to find your Svadharma, and you have to find like that thing that is your purpose, that is your life, that is your passion, and that will reflect archetypally what sort of divinities you can work with, and that will be dependent on your tradition. If you're Hindu, then there's some deva for everything. If you're Christian, then there's some saint for everything. If you're Ifa or Santeria, there's like some Orisha for everything. If you're a Buddhist, there's so many forms of the Buddha too, even, and so many bodhisattvas, so many different enlightened beings and gurus you could work from and work with. So yes, I think I'll end on that now. So please take care. I hope that you find out who is your patron deity, or your personal god or goddess or form of divinity that you connect with most personally. And I hope, if this is a new concept for you, I hope that it was easily or decently digestible, and that maybe it can help you be more okay with people that are different. Maybe this idea will allow you to have a perspective that is more tolerant and accepting, and okay with people that are just of a different religion or culture or spirituality than you. Okay. All right. Bye. Hare Krishna. Take care. Love y'all.